Thank you all for joining us on this LinkedIn Live. My name is Christy Venable. I am the CEO and founder of Smile Therapy Services, and we are a mental health and wellness agency located in the Washington, D.C. area. And we provide mental health and wellness interventions and specifically for schools, for corporations. Our goal is to make sure that we are helping them to improve their workplace culture through mental health interventions and also increase their productivity and overall employee happiness. So I'm so honored to be here with you all today with two dynamic ladies. And I'm actually going to have them introduce themselves. As you know, our topic for today is mental health and wellness in the workplace. And so I'm going to start with Miss Char. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you, Christy, so much for having me. Hello, LinkedIn family. You know I don't do live. This is not what I do. But I'm happy to be on this conversation. I am Char, the CEO. I actually do go by Chief Corporate Life Coach for Your Healthy Reality. I'm back and forth between Maryland and New York. I provide professional development coaching, leadership development coaching. I focus mainly on the mindset of the people in your organization. I start from the root. It is so, so important. So everything that I do tackles your mindset. That's who I am.
Perfect. And now we're going to have Miss Natasha.
Hi, everyone. I am Natasha Bowman. I'm the president and founder of two organizations, Performance Renew, which is a leadership development DEI firm, and recently the Bowman Foundation for Workplace Equity and Mental Wellness, both based out of New York City. And our mission is very similar to the combination of these two ladies as well. And it's creating inclusive and engaging workplaces for everyone, including those who have been diagnosed with mental health disorders.
Yes, thank you so much. I really want to thank both of you ladies for being here. We are all mental health advocates, and we are all doing, like Natasha said, similar work within the workplace, but definitely all with a different focus. And so, that's why this topic was very near and dear to all of our hearts.
Yeah.
And so we want to make sure that we have a fruitful discussion. And so, but right before we start, I want to just make sure that we just take a mindful moment. There has been so much going on. There's been so much violence in our world, so many people that are being affected by the different tragedies that we're having. And so, before we get started, I just want to make sure that we all take a moment to just be here in the moment so that we can have this conversation. And so we can be present. And so right now, I just explore or implore all of you to take a moment, take a breath, breathe in, hold it for a second, and breathe out. And let's do that 2 more times. Breathe in. And if you want, close your eyes to really help you release the tension that you may have. And breathe out. And one more time, breathe in. Hold it for 30 seconds. And breathe out. And so in addition to that, I want to make sure that, we just say a prayer for everyone who's hurting right now, and everyone who has been affected. We all stand with you. And so I want to make sure that we just acknowledge them and acknowledge that right now, as a country, we're all hurting. And so we all have to just come together to support one another to
Mhm.
help this country become a better place. And for us, we are trying to start in the workplaces. And so that's really where why this conversation is so important today. And so we have several questions that we're going to ask. Please make sure to utilize the chat box. So if you have any questions or if you just want to comment, we're accepting all questions and we'll make sure to tie that into our questions. All right, so we are going to get started. And so our first question or kind of topic, we're going to start with, because there's so much happening in the world today,
Mhm.
how do the different world events and tragedies, in that sense, really affect employees in the workplace? How do these different events that we're going through, how do they affect us in the workplace?
I think that, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. I think that, it's always been my stance that when you are constantly seeing people in the community that look like you, that look like your husband, your son, your brother, be murdered in cold blood without accountability, that mirrors some of the feelings that we have as marginalized people at work. Because when we see those images, we see people who are not valued, we see people who are not heard and respected. And that's often the type of feelings that we feel at work. And although we don't lose our physical lives, but in a figurative sense, it feels like that. When we heard George Floyd 2 years ago yesterday say, "I can't breathe," oftentimes the weight and the pressure of organizational cultures can feel that way, especially to Black people, where you can't breathe. You're suffering under the pressure and the effects of microaggressions, lack of access to opportunity and promotion, lack of pay equity, and it starts to mirror. So when we see those things, right, we start to digest them, internalize them, and it starts to feel very real to us in our workplaces in a place where we should feel safe. And many of us don't feel safe, right? And when I talk about safe, I'm talking about that psychological safety. So therefore, the more that we see these things happen, the more it helps us to, solidify the fact that institutionally that we're continuing to be oppressed both inside of the workplace and outside of the workplace. And both systems have been built against us. And we're working in systems, right, that were not built for us to be successful.
Yes, thank you so much. I think you hit on so many important points, so many. Char?
Yeah, I mean, it's always been since, I started in human resources, just that fight that Natasha is talking about. And more so, I think social media opened up our eyes actually to a lot. We're seeing way more now happening across the world, not just here in our own backyards. We're actually seeing this collectively together. And those are new triggers. I think for me, just even last week personally, I had some unidentified emotions I was going through. I was like, what is this? What is this new feeling? What are these new emotions that's happening to me? And I had to process that. And lucky for me, I actually know how to process that. But a lot of us don't. The employees, especially what Natasha was talking about from our community standpoint, we lack support, we lack representation, we don't even know where to begin. We don't, we're not taught to speak up out of fear. There's a lot of uncertainty that comes with this. There's a lot of anxiety. And then all those untapped emotions that we've never experienced before are now coming to the forefront. And we don't know how to deal with those emotions or what to do next.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you hit on a good point where you said you know how to process the different emotions and different feelings that have been coming up for you. Whereas many people, like you said, they don't know how to process it, right? We've been probably always in a state of just, hyper arousal and, so much trauma that we don't really process it. We actually sometimes, or most of the time, become numb to it, and we really just let it sit, right? Try to push it to the back. And so that is extremely important, for us to even realize that we actually need to process through all this trauma that we're being exposed to.
Process and be careful we don't end up doing trauma bonding. Because I've seen it happen unconsciously. It's happening where people are bonding based on the collective trauma that they have experienced.
Yes.
And that continues.
Yeah.
We now pass it on through the organization as well, from individual to individual. So that's another thing, just even bringing these type of terminology to the workplace and bringing that awareness is also important, because I don't even think most employees even understand that there is such a thing.
Yeah.
Can you go deeper? Can you unpack that concept of trauma bonding a little bit more?
For example, if I've gone through a certain abuse, there actually somebody said this to me. I was coaching, said I actually call it workplace PTSD, which is like I said, whoa, that's so interesting, because I never actually tied workplace to that. And if I've gone through what you said, the microaggressions, the disparity, everything, I'm now taking that with me, that form of abuse with me to the next organization. And right. And then immediately I'm going to bond with anyone else in that organization that has the same experience. Naturally, I'm going to gravitate to them, because now we understand each other, and now we're using each other to cope, which is not necessarily right, because I'm not healing. It's not healthy.
Yeah, you're right. I've actually talked to organizations about that as I've worked with them with their, and I haven't used that terminology. I like that terminology, but as I've helped them to do organizational culture assessments, and they may have, we do surveys, and their responses from Black employees or other employees may be very, very low, and they're like, oh, I've done this, I've done that, and I've worked with them, I've seen the work that they do. And a lot of the responses, it's very intriguing, because that's not what we're seeing. It's not what we're doing. I've had to explain to them that many people bring trauma from their previous workplaces into your workplace. So therefore, your level of trust is not automatically gained, right?
No.
So usually if I meet someone, I have a theory, I'm going to trust you until you give me a reason not to, right? I'm not, a suspicious person of people. But when you have that trauma, right, I'm not going to trust you as a leader until you give me, until you prove yourself, right? So I'm going to rank you low on this survey based upon my previous experience. And you've got to work extra hard in order to, help someone to come out of someone else's trauma. And I think organizations are really facing that right now, and they don't realize that trauma that we bring from workplace to workplace. And you're not only having to build and improve your organizational culture, but you're having to also build and prove that, okay, our culture is not like this one.
Right. And we walk in, just to piggyback on that, Natasha, we actually walk in with the expectation of we are going to have the same experience. It exists. I am going to go through the bullying. I'm going to at some point have have job insecurity. At some point I'm going to be not get that promotion because somebody we walk in with that.
I used to walk in with the exit strategy. The moment I got my offer letter, I was already planning my exit. Like, what is this going to look like? I don't want to be caught off guard. I walk, it was getting to that point. And that's when I knew, like, okay, working for people like that doesn't work, because when you're walking in, planning for foolishness, planning
Yeah.
to be
Yes.
intimidated, planning to be harassed, planning not to have the opportunity for promotion, then is it really worth you being there when you're putting more energy of putting your firewalls up, to protect yourself and
Yeah.
to exit?
Yes.
But it's sad that with all of these things, that means that the trauma in the workplace is way too high.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It is.
If this is how people are coming into new workplaces and bonding over trauma, this is a problem.
It is.
We're bonding over trauma. That's exactly what we're doing.
And this is why it's so important for companies to focus on their culture.
Mm-hmm.
Right, for companies to focus on making sure that the workplace culture is psychologically safe for their employees. Is I mean, you're hitting everything on why it's so important.
Mm-hmm.
The thing, Christy, that I realize when you say, focus on the culture, yes, they say they want to focus on the culture, but doesn't really understand what that really means, nor do they usually include the mental health of their employees.
Mm-hmm.
It's the people like me, you and Natasha of the world that go in differently with a different mindset in terms of how you do
Yes.
create that culture. But
Mm-hmm.
not every organization really understands that this is important for the culture.
Yeah. Or even willing to understand and look at something different. I've seen it personally.
Mm-hmm.
In our doing business or in talks with different corporations, they may say it, but are you willing to do the work?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Are you willing to do the work? And so with that, comes our next question. In your experience, as you are working with different organizations, different corporations, how are you seeing companies and corporations actually focus on wellness for their employees, if at all? Are you seeing that a lot of, corporations aren't really focusing on wellness? Or what type of wellness, I guess,
Well, I was
interventions?
going to ask you that. Are we talking about physical wellness, mental wellness?
Let's talk about wellness as a whole.
Two different aspects. But I think holistically, no. I think physically, yes. I think that there is quite a focus on physical wellness. They've been told by their insurance companies, oh, hey, your premium's going to go down if you have a healthier workplace, and they define healthy. And I've been the head of HR, and I've had these conversations with with our insurance providers, and it's, we're trying to mitigate strokes, diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity. Those are the types of things that they're saying are risk, right? And that's what's costing the company the company money in terms of what they're paying in terms of insurance, what they're paying in terms of productivity, et cetera, et cetera. And what I've realized in the past several months, and Char and I have talked about this, what I did not get as the head of HR is, okay, well, let's talk about mental wellness. Let's talk about how your cultural factors are impacting. Let's talk about how many employees are visiting mental health providers, right? That's not a conversation that's happening. So they're focusing in on a lot of times what we know in terms of productivity and things like that, and they're likening it to physical illnesses. But very rarely are they, or just now, I would say in the past 6 months or so, are they starting to say, oh, hey, maybe we should do some focus on mental wellness as well. And then even with that, they're still focusing on their culture. They're saying, oh, we're going to give everybody a subscription to the Calm app. We're going to do this. And that's fine. I can breathe just like we just did, right? And that gave me some temporary solace. But if I'm walking back into a culture where my boss is a bully or I don't have opportunity for advancement, I can breathe all I want to,
Right.
but that is not going to help me mentally, right? Which is eventually going to impact me physically.
I mean, all the points.
Listen, I mean, this is why I'm big on mindset. I'm so glad that, Natasha brought that up, because the real MVP is your mindset. The real MVP in your life is your state of mind. And what I'm trying to get organizations to understand is that the real true investment should be going towards the employee's mental health, their mental state. Why is everything always tied to the bottom line? Why does everything have to be about, oh, as long as it's going to save me money, so we're gonna do the physical aspects because we're gonna get reimbursed from, the insurance company, when the truth is, if you invested in this, because this is who's really working for you. You hired your employees to bring a certain type of knowledge and skill set, and you want them to be innovative in your organization. You want them to have clarity about what they're doing. You want them to feel good about coming to work, right? You want them to do all those things, but yet we don't give them the resources and the tools that they need to actually show up as their best self for you. Oh, you know what?
And you know what? I think you touched on a great point, right? How, when you all were in HR, they really focused on how the direct correlation between, like, giving them gym memberships, maybe, right? To get them more active, to bring down diabetes and to bring down this. But if they really looked closer, we will see it's a direct connection of your mental well-being that actually also leads to a lot of physical illnesses.
Yes. Stress is like the number one.
Stress is the number one killer, right? Stress causes so many different
all those other things.
So many different, and most of the time when you go to the doctor and you having so many physical illness and they can't explain it, it's usually due to stress, or a mental, or something that's dealing with, your mental health, your mental capacity. So we really actually should look at it differently to say, all of those things actually connects to physical illnesses. So if we focus more on mental health, then we will see a difference. If people are less stressed, they are less physically symptomatic. And it's so many different studies out there that shows that. But we don't look at it from that lens.
Christy, like a quick example, just you're talking about stress. So like how we get that nervous, anxious feeling on the inside where you just have a knot for no reason. Okay, so that's like, can you just imagine what's happening internally? We can't see it. But that knot is causing a lot of confusion and sending a lot of signals to all parts of your body that ends up breaking down the body.
Exactly.
And that's the same knot, because I was in corporate America once, and I was also on the seat where I reported to others. So I know what it's like when someone's going to sit me down. I've been, laid off before, just having that conversation, having the performance review conversation, going through, my corporate bullying. Always had a corporate bully at every organization that I've been at. Those things where you leave nervous, anxious, overwhelmed, that causes that internal stress that we can't physically see, and it shows up later as something else.
Yeah. And someone just made a great comment. Shamika says the mental manifests itself in the physical as an outward way to signal that we have to address our mental well-being. Perfectly put.
Yes.
I want to screenshot that. I love that.
I love that.
It's perfectly put. It's exactly what we're talking about.
I am going to screenshot it. I will quote you, Shamika, but I love that. That's something I've got to remember.
Yes. Remember that one.
But people aren't, as familiar with that, right? We just automatically think it's a physical thing, when many times it's actually mentally. It's the mental portion. So love everything that we're talking about.
I was talking to someone the other day, and she's a physician, and she was talking about how your mental stress affects your gut. And when we have these things that are happening, chronic things with our guts and our digestive system, oftentimes that signals things that are happening mentally. And once those things are resolved, then we start to see our digestive system and our gut issues resolved. But if we don't, then that leads to other things, right?
Yeah.
So it all boils down to whether or not you're mentally well. And when you're mentally well, you're physically well. So I think, going back to your original question about what workplaces are doing, I think they're doing it backwards, right? I think if they addressed your mental well-being, then they wouldn't have to put so much pressure on your physical well-being, right?
Yes.
Even if we're talking about now, we've got organizations that are insistent that people come back to work 5 days a week, et cetera, et cetera. And they don't realize the toll that that's going to take on people. And you're taking away from people's routine, right? Because if I'm not commuting, I may get up and exercise or have the opportunity to go for a walk. I'm probably going to eat a healthier breakfast instead of getting something on the go. It's all of these things that correlate to these different things, but they don't think about that. They don't think about the bigger picture of it all, right? And then even the financial toll of, oh wow, now I have saved all this time with gas. Toll. I mean, I live in New York. Tolls, to even go, it could be up to $20 something to go to work, just in tolls a day. If you live in, you know what I'm talking about, if you live in New York City or more, right? So, it's those types of things, and they don't realize that impacts your mental health. And so they're not looking at their culture, not looking at their policies, their practices for blind spots, right? Like that. What are those disruptors for our culture that are going to impact mental wellness? And so that's what we're looking to do through my new foundation, is helping them to look at those disruptors, to identify those blind spots. And once they realize those blind spots and they rectify, they're going to see such a total difference in all kinds of ways. And we have gotten it backwards. I bought into it as an HR professional. You would see the Harvard Business Reviews of this, and you just go along with it, like, okay, that makes sense. But what we haven't done is to challenge that. And I think that's what people like us on this call are doing. We're challenging what we have been told all this time to be true. And say, wait a minute, we're not really looking at the root cause. We're not looking at the underlying factors. We're not digging as deep. We're looking at superficial things, and we're running with it. We need to dig deeper into this. And once organizations allow us to do that, right, then going back to what your company's about, Christy, they're going to have to be more engaged. They're going to be, more happy, and I love that you have smile therapy. My husband sits on a board of New York City. He's a PA president, does things, and he ran literally a happy campaign for the students, and said, look, if we can just get them, they were dealing with fighting and all these things, and like, how do we do? But they're not happy. We've got to change the tone of this. We've got to be more positive. We've got to, they walk in, they got to see smile, they got to see this. And ever since then, we saw, that reduction in violence and some of the other things that, so it works not just with grown-ups, it's with kids, it's anybody that's a human, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So we have been having a great conversation. I'm super interested to hear you all's thoughts on this. So I, have spoke about the intersectionality of mental health and DEIB, right? So diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. Because I truly feel that we are even missing the mark in that area when we don't include mental health and wellness inside of there. So what are your thoughts on including mental health in this specific category?
How do you exclude it?
Right.
How do you exclude it? Someone who was recently diagnosed with a mental illness, right? I see that as just as significant to my ability or my inability to succeed if I'm in a workplace as being Black and as being a woman.
Exactly.
Right. It's right on up there. So as we're building DEIB programs, mental health has to be a part of that identifiers, right? Those dimensions of diversity that have been marginalized, and I did a survey through the foundation, and according to the respondents, 73% of people that responded to the survey identified as having a mental health disorder. 73%. But less than half of those, in fact, it was less than 30% of those said but I disclosed it to my and to my employer. So think about that, right? It's just like the same mental toll of things that we don't identify, that are not visible, such as
Yeah.
if I'm gay, or, my religion, and how that impacts my ability to work. It's the same way, right? If I can't bring my full, authentic self to work, it's
Yeah.
me,
Mhm.
my mental illness,
That's
I'm
right.
going to be least likely to succeed and be able to maximize my potential.
Absolutely. And I'm going to just second that with just even being a woman of color and talking to people of color and just people of diverse backgrounds. The reality is that we are coming from a place. The reason why we even have DEI programs to begin with is because we were lacking from the start. We were lacking in representation. We have gone through so many different types of, the microaggression. We're used to the unconscious bias and all those stressors that comes with just
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
who we are, and how, where we lived and how we were raised, and how we grew up. Mental health, that support, and having that be a part of is very, very important, and it's also very necessary, because we have to retrain and reprogram the minds of those individuals. We have to change the way we think, and the way we feel. And just like I said, I have the know-how to kind of manage and to cope, and know how to process things.
Yeah.
But we also have to teach people how to do those things for themselves on a regular individual basis, because life takes work, living takes work,
Mhm.
showing up every day as your best self is going to take work.
Yeah.
So we want to give them the tools and the resources that they need. And this is why we are excited about the Bowman Foundation. I'm
Yes, and Char sits on our board of directors, so
on the board.
that, yes.
Yeah, so do know there's some wonderful resources coming out of this foundation, just because we are keeping those employees in mind, and keeping that whole person. We're big on that, the whole person analogy. That's who's showing up to work. Let's give them the resources that they need.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. And I just want to highlight someone's comment that kind of goes along what we're talking about having different coping skills.
Yeah.
And he said, I must say, no one should rely on their company for mental stability. You
Hmm.
need to have coping skills before you enter that new role. And I definitely agree,
I
right?
agree with
We
that.
we have
Hmm.
Hmm.
to take
Hmm.
accountability individually,
Hmm.
with our own kind of needs and whatever that we're going through, to make sure that we are also doing the work on the individual side,
Yeah.
right? So
The
so
only thing I'll say about that is, and I agree, no one should rely on their job for their mental stability. That it's been time to tested that that's not going to happen,
right,
right? That because there's going to be other factors that impact your mental health as well, other than your workplace. But when it comes to the workplace, right?
Hmm.
A lot of times we don't know what we're walking into, right?
right,
So what we have to walk into with is boundaries, and I think
yeah,
that's something that we have not done. And
yeah,
especially if I think about as a Black person, when I was first entering corporate America, when I graduated from law school, my parents, like, you go in there, you better be glad you got that good paying job. Don't
Right.
you be disrupted. Don't you say anything. You put your
yep,
head down, you work, you be grateful. And I was conditioned to not have boundaries. I was
yeah,
conditioned. Oh
Yes.
my goodness, I'm the first person in my family to work for, at that point, a Fortune 1 country, let alone a Fortune 500 company. And so it was, hey, I got to utilize this opportunity the best way that I can, and I got to have a good
Hmm.
reference. I got to do this. And so therefore I had no boundaries. You could, say, racially charged remarks around me, to me, etc., and I wouldn't say anything because
Hmm.
I thought, oh, well, I'm privileged to be here, right? And so
Yes.
I didn't have any boundaries. So I think as we walk into work, we have to walk in with boundaries, right?
yeah,
And for each
Hmm.
person, that's different. And so, and once those boundaries are crossed, and you address them, and you say, hey, let someone know, either whether it's the organization, your leader, or a peer, whomever, that they've crossed certain boundaries, and if they're not receptive to that and they continue to, then we have to make a decision that no
Hmm.
job is worth our mental health.
yes.
Yes.
And it takes a while to get to that point because, again, we're grateful for opportunities. We want the financial stability, but at the end of the day, your mental health trumps all of that, and you got to
Yeah.
make that decision.
Yes.
Yeah, and I was just gonna add, unfortunately, like you said, we've been groomed a certain way, right? When it
Mm-hmm.
comes to being in the workplace, when it comes to being a professional.
Mhm,
And I also think the workplace has been groomed a certain way, in what is allowed in the workplace, right? And
mhm,
so I think for now, it's time for a change,
It
right? And so
is.
it's 2022.
mhm,
It's just like it's time for all of that to stop, as it relates to the microaggressions, as it
mhm,
relates to, the racial trauma that people experience within their workplace.
mhm,
I think we all have to change and put boundaries in place and making sure things are not allowed. We're not going to accept things.
mhm,
I
Yeah.
think that's, that part is super important. But also to your point, we have to know when enough is enough.
mhm,
Um, Unfortunately, some people don't, listen to their body or listen to their mind, and then the mind and body ends up, making the decision for you
In chaos. Yeah.
you
mhm,
know, and shutting down because, or
Mm-hmm.
you get to your breaking point, right?
mhm,
And now we're talking about a whole nother type of conversation that we have to have as it relates to your mental well-being. So it's just so important. Times
It
have
is.
changed. We understand more now. We're in a different place. And so we have to do our part as an individual as well to make sure we're taking care of ourselves. Because especially if you have a family or if you have, anyone, if you are not well enough to even take care of yourself, how are you able to take care of anyone else?
mhm,
So
Right.
we have to just do our own due diligence.
mhm,
Right. And I
Most
think
definitely.
the only thing I would add to all of that, because when we talk about, yes, you have to do the work yourself. The reason why we do put this out to organizations, because just for that reason, Christy, is we are going to show up to work, right? Because that is our paycheck. We'll show up to work before we show up to a family event.
Yep.
mhm, mhm,
We'll be afraid to call out before anything else.
mhm,
So when we're asking organizations to keep this in mind, because the people that work for you, more than likely, if you invest in them on this, from this angle, from this standpoint, from a mental health standpoint, they will carry out with whatever it is that you are asking them to do, because they value the job, they need their job, they want the
mhm,
job. So
yeah,
we're saying we want to teach them the tools, because I didn't walk in knowing how to cope.
Yeah.
yep,
I came from a Caribbean background. I'm Jamaican.
mhm.
That's a whole nother set of,
Sorry.
We have a whole other live for that
that's a
A
one.
whole
whole
other
nother.
life. So I my approach and just the way that I think is completely
Mhm,
different from a lot of the people I used to work with, and even having the seat at the table where I was the only one that looked like me at that table.
mhm,
And the mindset of my Caribbean mom training me, just like Natasha said, don't disrupt. Be careful. You need
mhm,
this job. You
mhm,
need this job. That you're, wow, you made it. You're so lucky. And
mhm.
then when I started to see other salaries, I was like, did I really make it?
Make it exactly. And my mom called me one time. I mean, I never really stayed at a job. I'll be honest, like more than 18 months. Like I came, I conquered, and I would, and I realized that to get promotional opportunities, I would have to leave and go to
Have to
another job.
leave.
I mean, that was just it. That was a
Mm.
pattern for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, my mom called me one time upset and was like, "Oh," because my son told her I was at another, and she called me like crying, and I'm like, I just don't understand why because she was the kind of person, she was a school teacher. She went to the same classroom in the same school for 30 years,
Mhm.
and so, and my father was the same way, until, they retired. And so, she's calling me crying, like, why do you keep moving? I mean, she saw that as me being a failure,
Right.
like, why do you keep, moving jobs? What's happening? And I'm like, because I'm not tolerating this. I'm not tolerating that. This is going to give me more opportunity, whatever the reason was. And she just could not conceptualize that.
Yeah.
I mean, it upset her. And then when I said I was leaving the workplace altogether, like to form a company, oh, that was definitely, like, oh, well, there's something, definitely wrong with you there, but again, it's that conditioning, So
Yeah.
going back to the original theme that Char was talking about, it now I kind of get the whole trauma bonding, right? Because going back to that, if you don't do that, if we don't create our own opportunities, because I think what we
Yeah.
know right now, and this continues to be true, and I'm very transparent my clients about that. What we know to be true is, as marginalized people, whether it's because your race, your
Yeah.
gender, your mental health condition, or whatever, 9 times out of 10, and we see that. Look at Fortune 500 companies, right? How many Black CEOs are there? How many women
Yeah.
CEOs are there? I think I can count both of them together
Yeah.
on one hand. We have to create our own opportunities.
Yep.
Yes.
And until we dismantle these systems that have been built against us, I
Against.
have to continue to do so. You got to put your boundaries up. You got to create your own opportunities, and we can no longer allow, right? We can't control our childhood trauma. We can't
Yeah.
control sometimes what's happened in our personal relationships. But I know what I will control going forward. I'm not letting a workplace, give me any more trauma or PTSD, as Char was saying, that
Yeah.
we can control,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And we can create our opportunities and put our boundaries up.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I want to hit on something. It's a comment that is definitely super important, and it goes toward mental health and the stigma that is around mental health in the workplace. So they say, wow, this is literally what I'm up against as a mental health therapist who was recently diagnosed with ADHD. It has prolonged their onboarding
Mm.
process. So on on our question, so as a mental health therapist, I'm a licensed professional counselor. In our application, it asks us, have we ever been diagnosed with a mental illness? That's our first
Mm.
question on the application.
And is that a disqualifier, possibly?
It,
Wow.
honestly, now that she has brought this up,
Yeah,
it could be.
Mm.
Now, is that ironic?
That's very ironic.
that is, yeah.
So,
Mhm.
I'm definitely
The
sorry to
fact
hear
that the
this.
people within your own profession don't
Yeah,
understand, and it's true. And one day you'll hear a story that I haven't shared yet, but it's true.
Yeah.
Sometimes working for mental health professionals can be the worst for your mental health, believe it or not. You
yeah,
Yeah.
know, and I'll do you one further, Christy. And I posted this a couple of days ago. I was filling out a TSA pre-check application. I don't know why it's taking
I
me so
saw that.
long. I've traveled forever, so you're going through these questions, and it's a set of, it's like 6 questions. Have you been convicted of a felony? Have you,
yeah,
these things that I would, are you a U.S. citizen? These things that I would typically associate, perhaps in some instances. I know we wrongfully convict fellas, so I don't even know if I agree with that one. But anyway, have you been, but all these questions. And the last one, have you been involuntarily committed to a mental health institution?
mm,
My
Wow.
answer was yes. And then it gives me the prompt, well, you probably should not apply.
wow,
Now,
Oh,
this is TSA pre-check. I'm just simply asking them to keep on my shoes.
okay,
right.
It means you have confirmed my identity
wow,
and that I can keep on my shoes and that I'm not a threat to society.
right,
And I said yes, and they were like, you probably, before you pay this money to submit this application, you should probably reconsider. And there was not
Wow.
a time frame. They didn't say reapply in a year, reapply in 3 years. So what you're telling me, the message you're sending me, right? If we think about the stigma of
the
mental health,
stigma
and we're
is
thinking about removing the stigma in the workplace when our own
Yeah.
government, right, has that type of stigma to say, if you've been committed, which, hey, yeah, I was a threat to myself at a certain point in my life.
Right.
It was
Right.
best for me to be committed to a behavioral health facility. That was best for me in that moment. And because of that moment, right, I'm considered a threat to the United States of America.
Mm,
That,
So how do we expect our managers to get past that
Right.
stigma?
Yeah.
If the United States government is feeding that stigma, because other people read those questions. If you got a TSA pre-check, you've read that. So what are you doing? You're being programmed, right? Oh, so you're a menace to society if you've been convicted of a felon, if you're not this, if you this,
Right.
if you're this, and if you've been involuntarily committed to a mental health facility. That's the way we're being programmed right now.
And to think we're just trying to get the workplace to
We're just
look.
trying to get the work. It's bigger than that, that
It is. It's bigger.
It's bigger. It's bigger than that. It goes so deep and so far that we're trying to touch the surface. And the truth is, we have to really dig deep. We got to get some bills passed.
We need some legislation around it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it doesn't make sense. And then just the question alone, though, okay, what does that really mean if I was involuntary? What does it really mean?
I wasn't in a forensic psychiatric hospital where I committed a crime. They don't even dig deep. They don't even say, well, why?
Why? What was the
general question? They put all of it in
everybody in the same category.
Category, right?
They don't even dig into. Okay, it's not an if then but that. Or
right.
Like I said, it wasn't even a time frame. Like, in the past,
right, 7 years.
Exactly. Even if you're usually, had a conviction or something like that, we've passed legislation where, you can't go back past us, a certain point. That person deserves a second chance. Yeah. I love that. But this, no time frame. It was.
But here's the irony with that, Natasha. You're going to travel anyway, so.
I'm going to try, and it's not a big deal. I mean, I'm going to be on the plane. All you're telling me is, I'm asking you not to take off my shoes. I'm going to get on this plane. Right. You let me on this plane.
Meaning, how important is that question then? Because you're going to get on a plane anyway. That same person
blocked from traveling.
Is not blocked from traveling.
Exactly.
So these are the things sometimes we have to really look at, even on our applications, job applications, some questions that we're asking, like, why are we asking this question?
Yeah.
How is this going to help me to make a decision whether or not this person is going to be great for the role that they're applying for?
Exactly.
We have to look at these things. And I think the people, because I know when I was in human resources, I did things a lot different than your typical HR person. I would like to call I think I was very innovative. I don't like performance reviews. I call it success review. Let's set them up in a positive way versus, I don't want you to enter my room already feeling a negative energy about
it. You're nervous. You're nervous. Why? I should already know how I'm performing. Why I gotta come sit down with you?
Right. If I was doing it right, you already know what's going on.
If I'm doing it wrong, I should know that. Why I gotta sit down?
Yes, it's about your success.
And it's just, even, you're right, I would get mad in certain states, they still check your credit score. They can check your credit. Yes. And I'm like, what did the people that have defrauded organizations have A1 credit, right? Bernie Madoff, I'm sure, had an 800 credit score. And these other CEOs of these that are defrauded, embezzled, et cetera, have 800 credit scores. But in some states, if you have, so for instance, when I was in law school, I had my daughter while I was in law school. I didn't have insurance. I had to file for bankruptcy. I had her as a C-section right after graduation. I had to file for bankruptcy. I was in the state of Arkansas, which they can check your credit. They did then. This was 15 years ago, for jobs and applying for the bar. That was a whole thing. Do you have a recent bankruptcy?
Oh, wow.
So I was getting rejected from jobs because I had a recent bankruptcy, because I didn't have access, because the underlying issue was I didn't have access to medical care. This is before Barack Obama. So I didn't have insurance. You can't go back and get it because it was a pre-existing condition. So because I didn't have access to medical care, I had to file for bankruptcy, so I can't get a job. So when I talk about those systems that are in place, right? That's what we have to begin to dismantle. And then those systems, if you didn't have mental health issues, imagine how I felt at that moment, right? I have, as a single mom, going to law school as a single mom. My son started his first day of kindergarten, was my first day of law school. We're 10 hours away from anybody we know. I still make the dean's list. I still graduate top of the class. Done all these things that you're supposed to do right, but I don't have access to jobs because I didn't have medical insurance.
Right.
That's a system issue, and it messes with your mental health, right? Going back to our original thing.
Yeah.
Right. So we got to dismantle the bigger system. We've got to dismantle organizational systems, because a lot of organizations don't realize you can dismantle a whole lot of stuff right here. You don't need a law to give you permission to do the right thing.
Right.
Right. Yes.
Right.
That's
so
right.
Preach.
That's
Absolutely.
definitely right. Yeah. And so going off of that, what are some suggestions that you all have on how can corporations incorporate mental health and wellness in the workplace? What are the things that they can do?
I'm going to be singing this forever. Number one, let's really create a robust mental health and wellness program.
Yeah.
Even if you have to go as far as having a committee of folks, make it a department, and giving your employees access to a coach. let me just throw that out there. Yes. No, it's so important. Like giving them access to someone that is going to help them with the necessary life skills that they need. It shouldn't just be about, your employment. I successfully, for the first time this year, implemented a coaching program at an organization where it's not exactly in the form that I wanted to see it, because I wanted the organizations to literally say, this is a benefit that you have access to. But what they did was, which I love, they gave each employee a certain amount of money for the year to spend towards their mental health and wellness. And then there are approved programs that money's going to go towards. And one of them being, coaching. And I think if you put these things in place where you're saying, I'm going to give you this set of money for you to spend just on your mental health and well-being, and guide them in the direction on, okay, what does that mean? Here are the things that we consider are mental health focus related that we would like you to use that towards. So that's one thing that I saw that I really love. And it's making a difference so far.
I like that. I love all of those. Any resources, any budget, but I'm a big advocate of fix your culture first, because again, I can give you all the money in the world to go see therapists, have an app, go have a coach. If the underlying issue and that pain point at work is still there, then that's not going to help you, right? And oftentimes it's about consistent accountability. We let some organizational leaders do things, say things that are inconsistent with what an inclusive workplace should be. We don't hold people to that same level of accountability. And you've got to be willing and able to identify the disruptors to your culture, whether it's practices, whether it's people, whether it's policies, whatever that is. And you have got to commit to removing those things. And once you do that, once you've created this culture of mental wellness, right, then your resources, right, that's when you put that in place, right, because you're setting then your employees up for success.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that, and I definitely agree with that. Something that I say, we get clients all the time who are dealing with the trauma and the anxiety and depression, like literally from their workplace, but our concern is, well, we can help them all we want, but they still have to go back to their job.
Yes.
And so how much helping are we doing if we're only focusing on the individual? And that really what was that sparked us to really pivot to the corporations, because we saw how many clients we were getting in that were literally on the breaking point. And it was mostly coming from work. And so, my thought was, we had to get into these workplaces.
Yes.
We have to help them to really improve their culture so that their employees could actually just have some quality of life after they leave their job.
Yes.
And so I concur with that 100%. It's a culture piece. You have to make sure that your culture is a place of safety, right?
Yes.
It's a place of
Yes.
inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
Absolutely.
place of positivity
Yep.
in general.
Yes. And the signs are there. It's so interesting. The signs are all there. You know that your culture is toxic. It's
Yeah.
clear. So do something about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But unfortunately, that toxicity comes from the top. And when it comes from the top, it's difficult, for anyone to actually come in and make change because it's coming from the top.
Yeah, the
Yep.
trickle down.
Yep.
And
It's
it
that
trickles
trickle
down.
down effect.
Trickle down, trickle down. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
And before you know it, you're like me and Natasha leaving after 18 months.
Yeah.
18
18
months
months.
to
That's
2
my
years.
that's my top. That's my cap.
I used to be embarrassed. I used to be like, why do every 2 years I'm changing
You
jobs?
think it's you, like, oh, maybe I'm the common denominator here. Maybe it's me. Then you start hearing these stories, and you're like, oh, it's not justice. It's just us, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Absolutely.
And so we are
Absolutely.
counting down, and I have
yes.
our last question, right? Um, and we know that it's important, but let's share with everyone, how vital is it for corporations to focus on mental health? Really, like years ago, but we're going to say right now, because we're here today. How vital is it for them?
If you got the messages that I have gotten since I've shared my mental health story, and the messages that I've gotten of people that have been on the verge of doing what I did, and they told me it was because of their current work situation. I don't even know if vital is the word to
Yeah,
describe
right.
what we need to be doing differently.
Yeah. I mean, there's no other way going forward, There's just no other way. We see what's happening in the world. We see, how people are just here today, gone tomorrow.
Yeah,
It's crucial, it's critical, it's a must. It should actually be the only way going forward.
yeah,
After everything that we've all been through together, as a nation, that should be top priority, period.
Mm-hmm.
period.
Period.
Yeah, period. I just feel like we're not going to get very far without changing the mindset and really starting to put more emphasis on people's mental health and wellness. I am so appreciative of one, just being able to lead an organization where we solely focus on mental health and wellness, and being able to, connect with individuals like yourselves who are also focusing on the importance of mental health and wellness, not even just in the workplace, in every part of your life. And so, it is just a way of life that we have to change to. That's definitely, how I feel. And so, I just want us to end by really telling everyone how they can get connected to you all, and what types of things that, if they're looking for this, that's why they should reach out to you. So Char, you can get us started.
You could connect with me via here on LinkedIn. My company is also yourhealthyreality.com. So you could visit me there, but I'm very much so on LinkedIn. Send me a message. Lately I've been really focused on helping organizations become coaching organizations, helping them turn their people strategy, connecting their people strategy with their business strategy by optimizing their talent. But I have to say the training requests that I've been getting in the last since the year started are all mental health focused, whether it's, figuring out resilience over burnout, doing boundaries training, communication with empathy, customizing trainings that are really going to help the mindset. I'm like a mindset coach because we have to tackle the mindset of our employees, giving them the tools that they could actually use inside and outside of the job. That is very, very important. So I challenge everyone listening, whether you are at the top or you're showing up as a professional to work, I really challenge you to start to view the way you see yourself in the world differently, and start to view the way you show up in the world, and ask yourself, what can I do for myself as an individual to start to walk on that path of positivity as it relates to
Mm-hmm.
work, personal life, any and everything in your life.
Yep.
That's key. So
Yep.
Love it. Thank you, Natasha.
I mean, here on LinkedIn, I'm on here all day, every day, if you will. So connect with me here. Follow my page. Follow the Bowman Foundation for Workplace Equity and Mental Wellness. We'll be sharing, resources there. So on both pages, I talk about mental health a lot. I had the distinct honor last week, I guess it was, to be named a LinkedIn top voice for mental health. So very proud of that, and very proud to just be having, being one of the faces of this conversation. So I look forward to engaging with everyone on here and just continue the conversation, hearing your experiences and your journeys, and let's do this together, right? Let's talk about, because my experience is one thing, your experience is another. So as I help organizations, I want to hear from you so that I can, make sure that I'm being holistic in my approach.
Yes. And of course, for Smile, we're all licensed mental health professionals. And so if you are in need of mental health workshops, safe space sessions, really all things mental health as it relates to interventions, make sure that you follow us as well. I've worked with Char. She has already helped us to really just maximize our workforce.
Mm-hmm.
And so I definitely know that, she is the real deal. We will also, Smile will be doing a donation to the Bowman Foundation.
Thank you.
We definitely know that
Thank you.
continuing this work will take us all.
yeah,
And we will, and I'm really glad that we all were able to connect. And, for everyone that is listening, thank you guys for being here.
thank you.
If you have any additional questions, please send it to my DM. I'll make sure that we get it answered. If you want to reach out to any of us just for more information, you see all of our names here. Follow us on LinkedIn. Send us some messages, and just take care of yourselves.
Yeah.
Take care of your mental health. Don't take it lightly.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say.
Yep.
Don't take it lightly. We appreciate you. It was a great conversation. I had so much
Thank you
fun
for
with you
having us.
ladies.
Yes.
Thank you for being here. Catch us next month. I don't know what our topic exactly is going to be, but Juneteenth is next month, so we will probably be focused on that.
That'll be great. Don't commercialize Juneteenth. That's my final.
Thank you.
Not Valentine's Day. It's not Valentine's.
Nonsense.
Commercialize Juneteenth.
Love it.
Don't try to get money off of our suffering. Okay.
Right.
It's a shame. Oh,
Like you said, that's a different conversation.
That's so many different conversations.
We can keep going for that, because I was too done with Walmart. But anyway,
we're gonna keep going.
You, and look forward to our live next month. Thank you all.
All right.
Have a great one. Be safe, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.